Did you catch what Draymond Green said after the game, talking about the young Rockets? We have the audio here for Joe of Draymond Green saying this. Draymond Green after the game talking about how much learning and conversation going on with the young Rockets.
I think they're doing a pretty good job. Like, you can hear the conversation. I was listening to a conversation today between Tari and I think KJ. And, like, the things that they're saying, you're listening to them, and, like, they're trying to figure it out. I was very intrigued by the conversation because, like, he's like, oh, but if, I could have scrammed him out, but the guy was low. And he's like, yeah, well, if you can get over there. And like, the whole conversation, I thought it was very interesting to hear two one rookie and KJ is in his second or third year, to hear them talking through things like that. They're well coached because what they're working through is actually the right thing to do.
Draymond Green calling the young Rockets well coached, which is not something anybody in this city would say.
Two guys don't make a team, but I'm happy to hear that at least two guys are starting to figure out defensive rotations, because it's taken, 3/4 of the season for at least a couple guys to understand help the helper, slide over from the weak side, rotate off pick and roll, show on the other side of it, things like that. Look, you know what? I think you can take bits and pieces of guys in terms of earlier in the season. Remember, KD and others were complimentary of Şengün and talking about they should actually be building around Şengün. I think that there are glimpses. We know how much. Look, with all the talent and accolades that were coming into this roster, you knew that these guys had skills, but it's about maximizing them. And it's one thing. The head coach is supposed to bring it all together. The head coach is supposed to take all the ingredients and he's supposed to make one hell of a batch of soup and serve a great meal. And so it's nice to hear that a couple guys are figuring some things out on defense. But when you talk about offense and defense and the fact that all they run is ISOs on offense and all you see is one guy after another stepping up in the line to take their turn on the wing to go one-on-one, and the bad shot selection and the things that they should have learned by now, especially with a guy like Şengün and where he should be defensively and what he needs to do, it's just been lacking. And so that's fine. And Draymond gets a small sample size. That's what he takes away, and that's a positive. There's no doubt about it. But overall, as it relates to how this season has gone and how these players have been developed, there's still a lot to be desired.
I think you bring up the good point about the sample size, and this is like one possession. So, like, this is a very, very small thing compared to the big picture of what has been not only the Houston Rockets season, but this Houston Rockets rebuild ever since they traded James Harden, right? I think there needs to be a purge within this organization. The coaching staff, I think it's probably a time for change. Mm-hmm. You bring up a lot of the points that we've talked about a lot: shot selection. What does the offense look like defensively? What are you doing? A lot of times. But the biggest takeaway I took out of this are two players that I've liked. Mm-hmm. I've liked everything I've seen from Tari Eason, really in college, but especially since he's been drafted by the Houston Rockets and the opportunity that he gets. I've fallen in love with KJ Martin. I love what KJ Martin does as a basketball player. Should he be playing 33 minutes a game? I think on a playoff team, he probably plays closer to 20. But what he can provide you, where you have elite athleticism, a dude who can get to the rim and finish, and a dude who can knock down threes with that type of defense that he brings to the table as well. I look at those two players as like, this is another thing that verifies my admiration for what I've seen from Tari Eason and KJ Martin. Because those are two players that are on this roster that I want to be on this team going forward, long term, assuming that you're not making a huge trade where another team is asking for these players. Now, I think both of them are role players. I don't think either one's a star on a playoff team. I think KJ Martin's a really good role player on a championship team. I think Tari Eason can be a really good role player on a playoff team. So I like that Draymond Green is noticing two players that I like having that basketball IQ. I don't think this entire team has that basketball IQ.
They don't.
And I would hesitate to say it's a well-coached team. I just think you have two players with the high basketball IQ that Draymond Green noticed it in that one singular possession.
It's coming this offseason. You just don't know how high in the organization it's going to get to. It depends on how much involvement Tilman's going to re-engage with. Because I've said Tilman's checked out ever since they weren't competing with the Warriors and he was saying we're going to kick their ass and step on their neck someday. He doesn't like losing, and we know that. But he also doesn't like the fact that around the country now, the national beat writers and the national NBA Wojs and guys, Windhorst and guys like that are saying negative things about his franchise, saying that it is just a completely upside down, chaotic situation that no coach or player wants to get involved in. And he's got to be the guy that changes that. I don't know to which level he will stop at. The coaching staff, we both agree, is going to change, and it needs to. The roster is probably going to be shaken up a little bit. I don't know to what level, what degree, but they're also going to add simply because they have money and they have a lot of young guys that they are targeting that they'd like to bring in that they think could kind of fortify the younger guys, take them down, and take them to the next step, no matter where they get in the draft, and we know that pick is coming. But do they go to the general manager? Do they go as high as the general manager and say, hey, here's the deal. We've got to do everything better culturally, operationally, and systematically. And in order to do that, we need a general manager that's been there and done that has the respect of the owner, and has the respect of the coaches, and has the respect of the players. We also need a coach that's on the same page with the general manager, and the two of them have resumes and a respect level that's going to command the room no matter which room they're in.
Yeah.
And that they also have a synergy between the two of them so that they're on the same page. I think we've said Udoka is a guy that they're going to look at. I think Nick Nurse in Toronto, a guy that came up through the Rockets
You think
system.
that they will, or you hope?
No, I think that they're going to look at
Good.
it. Yeah.
Good.
I think they're going to look at Nick Nurse as well. They're going to look at a guy that's been here before, that knows the Rockets when the culture was right under Daryl with Les, to where he could do some things. I think they should look at Kenny Atkinson. But I think from a general manager's perspective, it's the same thing. You need to have a guy that has a pedigree in the NBA that has the respect of other general managers as well as his own players, because it's going to make a difference. And God forbid they don't get one of the top two picks, but they're going to have to make the best of it no matter what to try and take this next step. There's enough talent on this roster for the long haul right now that they should already be better. And you see Oklahoma City, and they are. They basically kind of had the same blueprint as the Rockets, just get as much draft capital as possible, rebuild with all this youth, at the right time bring in free agents. Oklahoma City has synergy. They're playing together on a nightly basis. The Rockets are still trying to figure out how they run offense, who do they go to, what are they supposed to do offensively and defensively. You're supposed to be further along than that.
I agree with almost everything you said. I don't necessarily think you have to replace Stone, though. You need to have right. You need to find the synergy. You definitely need the basketball voice in the room. You need somebody that's going to command the room and not have somebody knock in and come into the room and then tell you how to do things. Agree with all of that. I think you can accomplish that with Stone still around. I think that there needs to be that voice, whether it's Udoka, whether it's Nurse, whether it's Atkinson. I think all three of those are really good candidates. And I think all three of them could work. Now, they're not going to work if Stone is interfering. So Stone needs to take the approach that Nick Caserio took with D'Amico, where it's like, okay, we're going to get our football mind. This is our football authority figure. He's coming in. He's the voice in the room, and I'm going to basically work for him. Like, we're going to have conversations. We're going to have difficult conversations about players. He might not like what I have to say. I might not like what he has to say, but that's the dude that's going to command the locker room. The Rockets have to have that. I still think you can accomplish that with Stone. I like the roster that Stone has built, quite honestly.
He's got to set his ego aside.
Yes.
He's got to realize whether this, and you made the comp with D'Amico. I'll take it a step back. I'll take it with Lovey. When Lovey decided to kind of be the guy that could kind of temper the overzealous Nick Caserio. You're not on the headsets anymore. Well, Rafael, you're not going to be interrupting my practices. And you need a head coach that's going to be able to say, and Rafael has to have the guts to be able to hire a guy that knows more, has been around more basketball than him, and understand that, hey, I'm hiring you to do the day-to-day, the X's and O's, and be in the locker room coaching this team. That's what your job is, and that's who I'm hiring you. That's why I'm hiring you.
Yeah.
My job is to put the groceries in the cupboard and give you every resource you possibly can to do what you need to do. And if you need something, come see me. If there's philosophy discussions to be had, let's have them. But I have to be confident in my ways and set my ego aside and realize if this team is going to take the next step or any step forward, it has to be with me taking a lesser role and getting a coach that can take a greater role.
He has to do that. You're right. He has to. That's the only way it can work. Because you've kind of been in the mindset of just clean house, coaching staff, front office. I still think that it can work with the front office, but it does require what you just said. He has to check his ego at the door, and he has to almost be, a dude that's working for the head coach. That's, hey, I like these guys more than you like these guys. Maybe he has final say on the roster, but he's staying out of everything else. He's staying out of practices. He's staying out of film room, all of that. That belongs to the coach.
All three guys we're talking about from a coaching perspective can walk into the room and tell him what Stephen Silas can't, which is, I've been to a championship or I've won a championship. I've taken an NBA team through a full season and competed for a championship. And in the case of Kenny Atkinson with the Warriors, Nick Nurse won a championship with the Raptors, and Udoka took the Celtics to the finals. So when you look at it, you say, I'm already telling you right now that I've been through more and I know more about what I have to do as a coach. Help me do my job by doing yours. Don't try to do both.
Nurse, you think it can be available?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because he's a little frustrated the fact that after they won a championship, they've basically just treaded water.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, they haven't tried to, and he is a really good coach.
I'd be over the moon about any three of those.
I would too.
Any three of those.
Yep.
Now, I don't think any three of those accepts the job if Rafael Stone doesn't check his ego out the door, though. I think all three tell you no.
That's a huge part of the interviews.
All three would tell you no.
The interview process, and I think part of the interview process is Tilman's going to talk to that coach without Rafael in the room.
Good.
They're going to have a conversation with Tilman and Rafael. And I think if Tilman's smart, and you know he is, he'll tell everybody to shut up and listen. Rafael, you leave the room. I need to talk to this guy for a while. Because just like we've heard when we had Trent Baalke discussions with the Niners, with Harbaugh and others and things like that, that there are going to be coaches that are going to walk into this discussion going, I really am intrigued by your roster. I really love the city of Houston. I don't love your GM.
Yeah.